All right, thank you so much. It's great to meet you all. And my name is Ryan Patrick, and I'm the Director of Product Development for API for Dun & Bradstreet and Hoover's. And I want to talk a little bit today about how we've opened up our platform over time, and also kind of give you a sense of how it's helped to transform our business, how the API has really helped to transform our business. And we're a little bit of a unique example from some of the previous examples in that we're a B2B company. And then also, data is really our core product and what we sell to our customers. So over time, it's been a little bit controversial for us to open up our API and really make it available to developers, which is really what kind of inspired our talk today around don't give out our secret sauce or our special recipe. And so that's kind of what we've been working towards and sharing kind of what we've done. I want to tell you a little bit about Dun & Bradstreet and Hoover so you have some context for what we've learned over time. And really, one of the key elements for us, if you're not familiar with Dun & Bradstreet and Hoover's, is the DUNS number. And you can kind of think of that as like a social security number for businesses. So the reason that's important is within our directory, we have over 200 million companies and businesses that you can get firmographic and risk data on. And the reason it's important is as a developer and you're working with all these different companies, it's important to have the ability to make sure you're getting the company that you're actually interested in. And because with 200 million businesses, it's sometimes hard with big data and working with lots of data sets to match the company that you're actually trying to work with. And so even our own brands, we struggle with that a little bit. So D&B, you might be talking about the business information services, or you might really just want to go to Dave & Buster's and drink beer and play video games with your friends. And then working for Hoover's, I can't tell you the number of people that come up and thank me for the awesome vacuum cleaners that we make for them. So, and even talking to my own family and telling them I work at Hoover's, you know, my grandmother somehow still thinks I work at Hooters. And so, like, having to kind of explain all that to her has been a little bit of a challenge. But another thing that we offer is corporate linkage. And what that is you can think of it as, we call it a family tree. And so what that allows is for you to kind of link subsidiaries and parent companies together. So just one example of a big company, GE, this is just a list of their media properties alone. And of course, they've got hundreds of subsidiaries. So kind of when you combine that matching capability with that linkage capability, it's something that complements a lot of the work that people are doing, developers are doing in trying to build their applications. And so why is this important? You might just care about big data, but more likely you're working with lots of APIs like you see up there. And you're looking at social sources of information, you're looking at news content and blogs to get lots of sources of insight. And that's kind of where D&B and Hoover's data and our API can help you link that information together, and then, of course, layer in some kind of firmographic and risk data on top of it. So I'll transition a little bit and tell you a little bit about our platform and how we opened up our platform and some of what we learned. But first, I want to give a little bit of context. So D&B has been around a while. I'm talking 170 years. And so 4 presidents have worked there. I know the first guy is Abraham Lincoln. I have no idea who any of the other guys are. If anyone knows that, I'll buy you a beer after the talk today. But so you can kind of see this. We've gone through the process of evolving how we get our data and insight to our customers. And so, I mean, everything from the printing press to delivering our data and insight through books, and then eventually to flat files, kind of early internet platforms, and now we're in this era of cloud services and APIs. And so I want to talk a little bit about how we developed our API. It really started as an initial kind of internal product where we took some of our different data sets and brands and built an API to really help with our internal product development efforts. And what we found is, hey, we're developing products so much faster, things are so much easier, and so we thought, pretty quickly, hey, we should expose this data and information to, of course, developers. And while we had good intentions in doing that and making API a serious part of our commitment and strategy as a company, we came across some challenges. So putting out those 4 different APIs, you had different interfaces, in some cases different data sets, different pricing protocols, authentication, documentation. So we really had to take a step back and say, it doesn't seem like a great user experience for developers, so we should really try to make this easier, and a theme I think of today is making things easier for developers and making it more frictionless. So that's kind of what we've done in launching a D&B Direct brand. We're in the process and in our journey of making our API better and more accessible and frictionless for developers and solving some of those problems that I mentioned up there around standard documents, a common set of interfaces, just making things in general, things that everyone knows if you're accustomed to working with APIs, just make your life so much easier. So I want to highlight some of the other things that we've learned. And the first area that I want to give some of our learnings around is just the product itself, the API. I think we've heard some of these themes today, but I would just kind of highlight them again. Thorough documentation. I think every time we spend an hour on our documentation, it's one of the best investments we can make to make things better for developers. Examples and code samples, we work on that quite a bit. And I think the key word in that second bullet point is working examples and code samples. Nothing's more frustrating as a developer than starting to interact with someone's API, looking at their code sample, spending the time with it, and then only to find out it really doesn't work. The third thing is kind of this theme that a lot of people have touched on today, which is using your own API and eating your own dog food, drinking your own champagne, whatever analogy you want to use. But I really don't know any other way to really see firsthand what the experience is like for your customers and for your developers if you're not building products on your own API and really seeing what works and what the pain points are that they might have. Flexible packaging and pricing. If you are monetizing your API, it's important to just recognize you're going to have potentially two ends of the spectrum. You've got people who are doing a proof of concept for a product or company all the way to enterprise customers potentially who want to integrate this into their various systems. So kind of understanding your market and developers that you're working with is pretty important. And then the last two are really around just designing your API and talking to developers. And in designing your API, in our experience, it's just always making sure you treat your developers like customers and really understand how they want the services to be designed. And really the only way that we know to do that is to engage them formally through conversations as they're going through the process of building with your API, or informally through hack days and hackathons and other events like that. So this is the business of API, so I thought I would just give you a little bit of what we did when we kind of pitched the API, because it really was pretty transformational for our company to really make that switch into it. And so the business case, what we kind of recommend is start with where you are today. And so the key with opening up your platform is if you are kind of this fortress up on a hill, you need to start to kind of create the case that if we want to be relevant as a company and we have data that developers and people want, if we're not providing it through an API or through a platform like an API, then people are going to go elsewhere to get the data, and over time you're going to be less competitive and less relevant in the marketplace. And so I think the next thing is to really provide a vision for where you're trying to go. And whether this is with investors or executives, it's important to talk about kind of what you're trying to accomplish. And so for us, I talked about kind of the single access point to our data assets, and really the economics of an API are amazing in terms of developing a set of services that can be used for so many different use cases. So in our case, engaging developer communities, building our own products, and then doing strategic alliances like one we recently did with Salesforce. So another kind of key takeaway from the business side is I would just recommend you have to market and evangelize your API internally. Oftentimes, especially if you work for an established business that maybe has more of a closed platform, and numbers are your friend in doing that. And so in our case, some of the key numbers we've had over the last few years is we have somewhat modest numbers, certainly for a B2B or for a B2C company, but for a B2B company, we've been able to engage about 5,000 developers. We've had over 500 applications launched. Some of them are internal, but the vast majority of them have been external, and people have built things that we never would have imagined, never would have had the time and resources to really make that happen. We've had alliances. And you can see it's been one of the highest revenue growth products in our portfolio. And we're now at a point where we're generating more than $100 million through direct and indirect channels on our API platform, which is a good outcome kind of from the business standpoint. So in closing, for us, it's certainly been a journey at Dun & Bradstreet and Hoover's to really open our API. It's still a process we're going through, but I would highly encourage you to really begin that journey and kind of embrace kind of opening up your platform. with developers. It's going to continue to kind of drive just amazing innovation potential, amazing revenue growth opportunities within your company. And so I'll kind of close with my parting thought, which is your secret sauce or secret recipe in your API. Thank you very much for your time.